All right, this section 4.6 is another way to solve quadratic equations. This one is called completing the square. All right, so this one is a little bit involved. The first couple of examples are not too bad at all. So I've got a variety of problems there, and then in the second video, this is where you'll get to the ones that are a little bit more complicated. Okay, they're not too bad, but you have to concentrate and think about what you're doing. So now, for problem 1a, it says, what is the solution of each equation? Use the square root property. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to get x squared by itself. Okay. If we can't get x squared by itself without making it a fraction, we're going to at least get the x squared term by itself. Okay, so we could just get 4x squared by itself. All right, so to do that for this problem, I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. And that will give me 4x squared equals 36. Now, for this problem, if I divide both sides by 4, x squared will be all by itself, and I don't have a fraction here. So that's my ultimate goal. If I had divided here and gotten a fraction for this answer, I would have backed up to this step. And we should see one of those here in just a little while, maybe. At this point, I know x squared is equal to 9. I want to know what x is. This is where we're going to use the square root property. That property says if you take the square root of one side of the equation, you must also take the square root of the other side of the equation. So my answer is x equals 3, but it's not just a positive 3. If I take a positive 3 and square it, I get 9. But if I take a negative 3 and square it, I'm also going to get 9. So my answer is going to be plus or minus 3. Okay, so let's finish up our steps over here. Step 2, we're going to square root both sides. And step 3, the answer will be plus or minus always. All right, when you use the square root property and take the square root of both sides of the equation, your number is always plus or minus. Always, always, always. Please don't forget. Okay? So this is my solution. Now, you could check this in the calculator if you wanted to. But remember, if you're going to check it in the calculator, you've got to move everything to one side so it's equal to 0 before you type it in. Okay, I'm not going to go there today, but if you have questions about that when you come back to class, let me know. All right, problem B, I want you to try it. Okay, try to get the x squared all by itself and then use the square root property. So pause the video, work it out, come back, and check it with mine. So the first thing I'm going to do to get x squared by itself is add 5 to both sides. So 3x squared equals 30. When I divide both sides by 3, I don't get a fraction this time. I get another whole number, so we're good. So x equals 10. Take the square root of both sides. I get x over here. On the other side, when I do the square root of 10, I get a decimal. The directions didn't tell me to round anything, so I can't give a rounded answer. You're going to leave your answer in radical form, but remember it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 10. So now, if you were using your calculator to check this, remember, you're going to take and put everything on the same side so it's equal to 0 before you type it in. When you graph it, you need to know that this decimal is 3 point something. I don't know what it is, but it's 3 point something. We could type it in. And you're looking for it to touch the x-axis at a positive 3 point something and a negative 3 point something. Okay, so it should be just a little bit to the right of 3 and a little bit to the left of negative 3. That's how you can verify it in the calculator. Now, problem 3. This one is a little bit different because I've got lots of stuff over here. I can't get this x squared by itself without having an x over here, and I don't need that. I need all of my x's on the same side. So when you have a trinomial like this, what you're going to do first is you're going to check the left side to see if it is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, and remember my my nickname for that is a square double square. So I need to check and see if it is one of those. So I can take the square root of x squared. It will give me x. The square root of 4 gives me 2. If I multiply those together, I get 2x doubled is 4x. So this is a square double square. Since my middle term is positive, I put a plus here, parentheses, and a square, and just bring down my 25. So, for number 1, it was a square double square, so we're going to factor it into a parenthesis squared. Then we're going to use the square root property. So go ahead and take the square root of both sides. And over here, the square and the square root will cancel, so I just get x plus 2. On the right side, the square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. So now, get x by itself. There's a couple ways you can do it. I would just go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides. So I've got x equals, and then your book normally writes it this way. They'll put that negative 2 here, and then plus or minus 5. Because this does not have any variables left in it, it does not have any radicals in it, you have to split it apart and get 2 answers. So here's the 2 parts to that. If we ignore this negative on the bottom, you have negative 2 plus 5. That'll give me 3 for one of my solutions. If we ignore the negative on the top, I have negative 2 minus 5 gives me negative 7 as my other solution. Alright, so let's finish my steps over here to the side. I used the square root property, and 4 we solved for x. Okay, so my solutions, x equals 3 and negative 7. If you are going to check this on your graphing calculator, you're going to move your 25 over here so everything's on the same side equal to 0 before you type it in. All right, on the next page, I have 2 just like this for you to try. Nope, sorry, just one. Just one of those, and then we're going to stop this video and we'll start the second one for this section. All right, so here is our other example. Okay, so remember, the first thing we want to do is check for a square double square. So I'm going to go ahead and give you time to pause the video here, and then I'm going to come back and finish working it. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 49 is 7. If you multiply those together, you get 7x. Doubled gives me 14x. Because this is negative, I'm going to put a negative in the middle, parentheses, and a square, equals 11. Remember, step 2 is going to be square root property. So take the square root of both sides, and I get x minus 7 equals plus or minus. This time I can't take the square root of 11, not without making it a decimal, so I have to leave it. To get x by itself, I'm going to add 7 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 11. That is your answer. All right, so after we did the square root property, all we did was solve for x. All right, that is it for the first half of section 4.6. We'll be back in just a few minutes to get the other part of it.